Hello, everybody. Has everybody had a chance to find us? Hopefully we haven't been targeted by, the evil scammers that have been besetting our events up until now. So, yeah, good afternoon and welcome to the final session in our Hydrocephalus Awareness Week. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome Tara, who's come to talk to us about the navigation study. Hydrocephalus Awareness Week is that opportunity that we have every year to help raise awareness of hydrocephalus, to empower people with hydrocephalus to speak about their condition with confidence, spread the word to GPs, workplaces, schools, etc. about the condition and how it can affect people, but also just to let people know what's on offer from Shine services. So do get involved. We're really pleased to see everybody here today. So, okay. As you know, Shine has been actively involved in research projects for quite some time, and the only way really to learn about the conditions, how it affects people, which then leads to strategies or ways that we understand to minimize the conditions. The only way to really do that is to look at the people themselves. So, we're always asking our members to consider getting involved with the research projects, to sign up, find out what's involved. You don't have to, but the more people that get involved with the conditions in the research into it, the better our understanding is, and the better everybody is better placed to help minimize the effects of conditions so that people can really thrive and succeed in their lives. So without more ado, we will hand over to Tara to tell you about the navigation study that we did mention in Together magazine, I think probably this time last year, I think. So we've been beset by the pandemic as well, so things have changed a bit. So is that okay, Tara?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen then, so you can see my slides. Is that all visible? Is that all good?
Should come through any moment now. Yep, that's lovely. Off you go.
Perfect, great. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here. What a great opportunity. Thanks very much to Jill and Jenny for inviting me. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to telling you a little bit about our research project. So my name is Tara and I'm based at the University of Plymouth, and I am a researcher working on a project which relates to navigation, or the way that we find our way around. Now, a key part of this project is looking at navigation in people with hydrocephalus. So even though we know that some people with hydrocephalus do experience navigational difficulties, this has not been very well documented in research so far. And that is the aim of this project release, to really understand how people with hydrocephalus navigate and what sort of difficulties they experience, what precise behaviors do they struggle with, if they do. And the hope is, as Jill said, that this is the first step in designing interventions that target those behaviors that people struggle with, that ultimately can help people to navigate better. So of course, the first step is finding out as much as we can about where those difficulties lie. Right, so first of all, it's probably a good idea for me to tell you about what navigation is. I know that it's, as a word, it can have many different meanings. So in psychology research, I would define it as an umbrella term to describe a variety of different behaviors, which include the way that we plan, the way that we move, and the way that we find our way around in our environment. So in other words, it's figuring out where we are and figuring out how we get from a place that we need to a place that we need to go. And this can be, for example, with very familiar environments. So perhaps if places that we navigate to daily, for example, when I go to work, well, before the pandemic, I might not think very much about where I'm going because I've navigated this route many times before and I know exactly where I'm going. So I don't really need to look around that much. On the other hand, I might still pay attention to some landmarks. So for example, if I remember that here I need to turn left at the cafe, or I might also pay attention to street names, particularly if I struggle. So those are the things that can be helpful to remember or to write down. Navigation also includes going to a less familiar location. For example, if someone asks you to take part in a navigation experiment and you perhaps have not navigated to a place before, perhaps it's in a part of the city you have not visited much before, you might have to use a map, for example, or some sort of GPS device to help you find your way around. So navigation describes all of these behaviors, and this is what we're trying to understand with this project. Now, next, I would like to tell you a little bit about our study and what it will involve if you do decide to take part. So, previously to the pandemic, we did our study in person. So we'd invite people to the University of Plymouth or to visit the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. It might be familiar to some of you. Indeed, some of you may have taken part in this study. But obviously with the pandemic, that has put a great spanner in the works. And yeah, it's just not been possible to continue testing in person. So what I've done over the last couple of months is I've translated the study to be done online. It's not necessarily, so one key aspect of the study in person was actually navigating outside with people. So just walking around and asking them to remember the route. But of course, that is something that we cannot do. But all of the other aspects of the study remain as similar as possible. So I still hope that it should tell us very useful things. So the study will be done on software called Zoom. You might be very familiar with it since the pandemic. It might be new to you, that's okay. It's a video conferencing software, and it allows us to see and hear each other so that we can communicate as close to, real time as possible. And if Zoom is new to you and you have not used it before, then that's okay. I've got a little guide that I typed up, and indeed the first session or part of the first session, if you do decide to take part, is just getting familiar with Zoom and trying out the different functionalities. One thing that Zoom allows is, as you see, is sharing screens, which is very great for some of the measures. And so this is just an example of one of the slides of one of the tasks that you might be doing, where I can share a screen and then I can ask you to draw on it as well. So yeah, so it's overall Zoom is great in my experience. And in terms of what we'll actually be doing, so the original study, it was made of 2 quite long sessions, around 3 hours each. But because with Zoom fatigue, looking at the screen for many hours is not ideal, what we've decided to do is split it into 4 sessions instead, and to make those sessions a little bit shorter. I think it should be around 1 hour to maybe, on average, I think 1.5 hours long. It is an estimate. People do vary in how long completing different tasks takes them, but on average, it should be around 4 1.5 hour sessions. And in those sessions, we will do different tasks, and some of the tasks will relate to navigation. So there'll be spatial tasks, and some of the tasks will be more general, looking at more general abilities, such as your ability to remember information over time. And as well as those, I will also ask you to do some tasks, including the See Here request, which I will tell you more about in a moment, and the statue task, and the questionnaires, which the way I've planned it is to do those independently in between the Zoom sessions. But that's not necessarily the case. So I have clear instructions as to how to download these tasks and how to do them. But I will be on hand if there is any difficulty. So we can always add an additional Zoom session or add it to an existing Zoom session. Yeah, but they're more like games, so I thought that maybe it makes sense to kind of do them more independently. But I will be, obviously, if there are any difficulties or issues, then I will be there to talk you through it. Right, now in terms of the navigational tasks, so one of the tasks I will ask you to do, we call a place learning task. It's a computer task, and in this task, you'll be exploring an environment using the keyboard, and you'll be looking for this pole. And when you'll find it, you'll be able to pick it up, and then you'll be transported back to where you started the task. And then you'll have to put the pole in the exact same place where you found it originally. And so these are just a couple of screenshots from the task, and you will get feedback to see how well you've done. So this is a feedback slide here. So this would be the starting position where you started, and the green cross is where the target was, where the pole was, and the red cross is, well, in this case, where it was placed. And it might be a little small, I hope you can see that, but so the idea behind this task is that you're learning where something is and you're receiving feedback, and so you're learning where something is over time. And you'll be asked to help you to do this task, you'll be asked to use visual information around you as well. Yeah, so that's place learning. Then we will also have See Here request, which is a game. It's a spatial navigation game, and I think it's quite fun. And most of the so it's a game that has different levels, and I will ask you to do some of those levels. And most of the levels will involve looking at a map. So you see here on the left, looking at a map and memorizing where these different waypoints are. So you can see here those labeled as 1, 2, and 3. And then once you've memorized where they are, you'll be asked to navigate it using this 3D path in the game. So you can see here there's your little boat, and you have to steer that boat and visit those waypoints in order. And here are just a few screenshots from this game. Now, both the place learning task and the See Here request, so that you have just described, people who struggle with navigation tend to find them a bit tricky. But that is, you know, just rest assured, we are not expecting perfect performance. And indeed, if you do a task which you find difficult, then that tells us something very useful. It tells us that we're pinpointing the exact difficulty that you experience. So that is incredibly useful information to us, yes. So just to rest assured, we are not expecting perfect performance by any means. It's actually good to have variability. Right. So as well as those navigational tasks, we will also have some tasks of general abilities, as I mentioned before, and I'll just go through them now. So first of all, we'll have a mental rotation task. So mental rotation is our ability to manipulate, rotate, for example, rotate objects in our mind rather than necessarily seeing them rotate. And this particular task, the way that we have it, it will show you two sets or sets of two figures. An example you see here, there's one on the left and one on the right. And your objective will be to determine whether they're the same or different. So whether that's the same figure but rotated, or whether they're actually different figures and you cannot rotate them to match up. Here I would have, originally when I thought it was a Zoom call, I probably would have asked you to say whether you think these figures are the same or different. But I think I'll skip that for now, because I think you can only communicate using Facebook comments, if I'm not mistaken. So for the, is that correct, Jill?
Yeah. It is, yeah. Thanks a lot, Tara. Okay. That was really, really good.
Oh, I haven't finished, sorry. Sorry, there's more tasks.
Can I just ask, Kelly's just asked us about taking breaks and mental fatigue. Would that be okay?
For this talk, sorry, or for the study?
No, just for the study.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Like at any point, and I say this usually at the beginning of the study, yeah, just if you want to take breaks, please do take breaks. Generally, the way that I do it, I usually ask people if they'd like to take a break after every task anyway. So there's absolutely will be plenty of opportunities for breaks.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
It was me that interrupted myself. Anyway, so I'll tell you about a little bit, a few other tasks that we'll be doing. So another one is looking at spatial memory, and this is how we remember locations. So in this task, you will see different shapes on the computer screen. It might look something like this. Well, it will look something like this. And then what will happen is that these shapes will flash in sequence. For example, like this. And then you'll be asked to repeat that sequence in the same order. Yeah, and you'll be using the mouse to respond. So you'll just be clicking on that sequence, basically clicking on the shapes in order. And yeah, and spatial memory is something that's quite key for navigational ability. So being able to obviously remember different locations over time. We rely on this quite a lot, as you might imagine, when we navigate or plan our routes. We'll also be doing a task in which I will share my screen, and on it you will see a map of a zoo, and I will ask you to plan a route around the zoo to visit different specified locations with some constraints. And I just put an example of a map of a zoo. Ours is a little bit more boring than that, I'm afraid, but this is just for illustration purposes. So that's another task. and we'll do another task which will involve, it will be more about perception of detail, and just an example here. So I'll show you a simple form such as this triangle here, and then this form will be hidden somewhere within this more complex figure. So this is the complex figure here at the bottom. And what I'll ask you is, I'll ask you to find the form where this form is and to just draw it out for me. So it would be, so in this case, maybe I'll give you a moment in case you want to test yourself and kind of see where you think it might be. And in this case, it was here. So I hope you can see that in yellow. So it's embedded here. And there'll be several of these that we'll browse through. And finally, I will also ask you to do some word tasks. So in one of the tasks, I will show you a list of words, and I will ask you to read them out to me. In another task, I will read out a list of words and ask you to remember them and to repeat them out to me. And so this is, so, you know, our ability to remember words generally might be seen, is generally in research seen as separate from our ability to remember locations. However, I hope you can see how sometimes we will need to remember words when we're trying to remember locations. So for example, if we're trying to remember road names, in that case, we would be remembering words as well. So that's something that could impact our navigation as well. And just very lastly, there will be a short task in which I will ask you to remember sequences of letters and numbers. So just a quick example, for example, the quick example would be if I read out 3A6, and then I'll ask you to repeat the numbers in order first, and then the letters in alphabetical order. So for this one, the correct answer would be 3, 6A. And I've just got another example. So if I read out to you G7S, then the correct recall would be 7GS. So I will ask you to record the numbers in order and then the letters in alphabetical order. It's quite a tricky one, this one. People do tend to struggle with it. I know I did when I was doing that task, but it's very short. So there's the silver lining there. But again, it tells us something quite important. Right. So next, I will just quickly, I hope there's enough time, Jill, I thought it'd be good to mention the inclusion criteria for this study. So this is, unfortunately, not everyone can take part in our study, and that is just to make sure, the reason for these inclusion criteria is to make sure that we can run the study correctly, and also that we can interpret our results correctly as well. So the first batch of the inclusion criteria refer to your access to certain hardware. So in order to run Zoom and to be able to play See Her Request and the Statue task, you will need access to a computer or a laptop with a camera and a microphone. So this is just so that we can see and hear each other. And also you would need access to an Android or Apple phone or tablet. So an iPhone is okay, an iPad is okay, a Google phone is fine, and a Google tablet is okay as well. Unfortunately, Microsoft phones and tablets are not compatible at the moment. So yes, so that does limit, obviously, who can take part. And the second batch of inclusion criteria refer to demographic characteristics. So so our age range that we're looking for is 18 to 65 years old. We ask you to be fluent in English. You don't have to be a native speaker, but fluent is important. Also normal or corrected to normal vision. So if you wear glasses, that's okay. If you wear contact lenses, that's fine. I will ask you to wear them during our sessions. And finally, these criteria are the 4 to 6. They are to make sure that the results that we observe are due to hydrocephalus and or spina bifida, but not another related or unrelated condition. So we do not include people who have a psychiatric diagnosis, a history of head injury or other neurological conditions, and those who are dependent on alcohol and drugs. So if you have mild anxiety, for example, or mild depression, then it might be okay, but do email me to check, and we assess those on a case-by-case basis. Right, and so after this, I'll just say, how do you get involved? So if you'd like to be involved, please email me to find out more. Here's my email below. I do have an office phone, but I'm not in the office at the moment, so please don't call me. If you call me, you can leave a voicemail, and I will be hopefully going back to the office every now and then in a few weeks' time, but email is by far the best way to reach me. So do email me. As I said, hopefully now you see I'm not very scary. And there's a familiar face there. But even, if you're not sure about any of the things that I said, you can just email me and we can have a chat. When I receive an email, what I will do is I will send you more information about the study. So I have a long information sheet that will basically summarize that information that I told you today. And then I will also ask you to confirm that you meet the inclusion criteria. And then if we're still happy with everything, then I'll go ahead and give you some times to book you in. And very finally, I'd like to acknowledge my team. So Alistair, he's a PI for this project, and you might know Trudy, you might know Catherine. I know they both work with people with hydrocephalus, and Hugo as well in London. Our respective institutions are listed here, and our funder is the ESSC, the Economic and Social Research Council. And thank you very much for listening. I do hope to hear from you. It would be wonderful if you wanted to take part and help us understand hydrocephalus, and particularly how people with hydrocephalus navigate.
Tara, thank you so much. Thank you. That was really good. If anybody's got any questions for Tara, pop them in the comments, and that's really good. One thing I think I'd like to say is, if you looked at any of those things and thought, oh, that looks hard, I'm not sure if I can do that. The fact that, people finding things more difficult to do than other things is really important information. That's how we learn what it is about hydrocephalus or spina bifida that makes a difference, what is different to people without the conditions. So, don't be put off if you've seen something you thought, oh, I don't know, that shape thing. I mean, I couldn't do that, I think that's probably the aging brain, really. But, this is all important. So don't be put off if you thought, oh, that looks a bit difficult. It doesn't matter. The aim of it is not to get it all right, but the aim of it is all to, add your experience, add the things that you find harder, or, the skills. And that way, if everybody finds the same thing harder, that's great, because we can build in things. Well, what's going to help? That's how we do that. So
a really excellent point. Thanks, Jill. Yeah, because I think I've had people before be a bit nervous, so they might say, oh, but I'm not very good at navigation, and but that's what we want.
Yes.
So yeah.
Why is it, you know, and that, you know, it's finding out the why behind the, I find this harder. Why do you find it harder? And I think when I was talking to Alistair quite some time ago, and he said, actually, we don't really know how people find their way around. That's something, you know, we just don't know for anybody how that happens. So this is a learning thing for, you know, absolutely everybody.
Definitely. And yeah, and it's very useful, it's useful to understand, not just to help people who struggle, which is of course incredibly important, but to understand navigation itself. So there's definitely different benefits.
I just think it's going to be it's just so interesting. So I really hope that, you know, having seen a glimpse of what's going to be involved, then that'll be really great. I'm going to sign up as a age matched control before my age excludes me from the study. So yeah, has anybody got any comments, questions, contributions for Tara while she's here? Lots of people saying about their navigation. I know, it's just so,
yeah.
I tell you what though, before I started driving, I was always that person in my friends who turned the wrong way out of the restaurant, always turned the wrong way out of the toilet. You know, there was, you know, I would just get lost anywhere. I could get lost in my own bathroom. I could get lost. And, you know, it's actually something that I had to learn, you know, like once I started driving, I had to learn how to do things. So, you know, it's something that really, you know, what is it in my brain that has woken up? You know, what channels have I opened? What pathways in my brain that are open that were closed to me for the first 30 years of my life, you know?
Yeah,
so
because driving is a particularly intensive thing to do as well, because you're not just navigating, there's a time pressure, there's a cost. If you turn the wrong way, you might not know where to go. So the walking and driving is actually something quite interesting. Yeah. And you know, and it is, what's interesting also is that it is, navigation is a skill, and some people can learn ways to improve. And of course, sometimes there will be limits, particularly, you know, if you have a neurological condition that might limit to how good you can get eventually, but there might be still things that can help. And I guess a part of this is trying to, well, paving the way for then research to target those behaviors of difficulty. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Nina's asked us about having feedback kind of like during bits of the tasks, you know, just actually letting people know kind of what it was that, you know, how well they did. Actually.
I can do some general feedback. It's sort of in science for ethical purposes. I'm not allowed to like share like the whole performance with you, unfortunately. I know that would be useful for some people, but the reason behind that is that when I have a responsibility as a scientist. When people arrive and they leave, they should be in a comparable state. Perhaps they will be a little bit tired, but there should be a comparable state. And I guess, and in a way, we're discouraged from saying precisely. So for example, if I tell you, oh, you're really bad at this, I wouldn't want to affect people to then think that they're bad at this, because we still don't understand fully what does that mean and whether they can get better. But I can tell you, I've done this in the past where I'd just say like a more general little bits and pieces. So I might say, well, I've noticed you did this well. It seemed like you particularly struggled with this part. Or I will ask you to tell me, and then I can say whether I think that matches up with what I've observed. So
that sounds really good.
Yeah, so to some extent, but yeah.
I think there's been some comments on here about like familiarity, actually learning learning a new route, and that's something that over the years a lot of people have told me, that if it's a new place, they have to rehearse it quite a few times before they can do it on their own. So, but these are all really important. Really hoping, all the people that are commenting here, I really hope that they'll think about joining in the study, because it sounds like, this is a big issue for lots of our members.
And it'd be and it would be really good to hear your insights about it. I think, for people that take part, I think that's something that there should be space in the time in the final session for us just to have a little bit of a chat. And I think those have been really useful. So really, seeing how you see these things. And and also I should probably say thank you to everyone who has already emailed me. I really appreciate that. Hopefully, I think I've replied to everyone. So thank you so much for that already, but it'll be good to hear from more of you.
Well, Nina's asked as well, what will you actually do with all the information, all the anonymized information? What will you actually do with it to kind of come to your conclusions in a couple of sentences?
So we'll be analyzing the information, so putting aggregates together. We're also hoping to, as Jill, you mentioned this, we're hoping to recruit some typical people who are similar to the people who take part with Hydrocephalus, and then compare that performance and then see how it differs, and if so, in which ways. And as you noticed, we also have, as I talked about it, I have some general tasks looking at general ability, like your ability to remember words, for example. So what we want to do is we want to see how does performance on those general tasks underlie the difficulties with navigation. So if you imagine, if I have my navigation, there are different skills that might be underlying it, like like I said, like mental rotation or spatial memory. We have to remember locations over time. So what will hopefully is the data analysis will also help us understand not just where the difficulties are, so but also what underlies them, which cognitive abilities underlie them. So it could be that for some people, for example, spatial memory is the thing. So whoever struggles with navigation has low spatial memory. And then that would tell us that this is the cognitive ability that we need to target in the future. But I think more realistically, we'll probably have different things going on for different people, perhaps, or several different abilities underlying or feeding into affecting the navigational ability. So that was a really long answer, but in short, we'll be analyzing the data. We'll be publishing results in scientific journals. We'll also, for the anonymized data, we'll be sharing it with other scientists or kind of publicly on a way just to promote transparency and openness in science. But in all those cases, there would be no kind of associated identifying details. But we're hoping that, it's a first project of many, I guess, that there'll be people who will find Hydrocephalus interesting and who'll be able to, will be more and more research going forward.
Brilliant. There's some people have suggested sort of Google Street View, that they've found that very helpful, because you can actually, as you're going down somewhere, you can actually see, what the route is, what things should look like, and also what it looks like when you get to the end, so get your destination. Sean's put a comment on about like the ethics and people having the right to know and be told if they want to. I think there, there is that the ethics that you said about kind of making sure that people don't get, despondent or distraught, about their abilities afterwards. I think there's just ways of feeding it back, maybe kind of, as you said, with, in general, but then once it's all gone in and it's all anonymized, there won't be any way of actually finding out who responded what aspect.
in terms of the way that the university protocols require us to store like the consent forms and the data for, I think, 10 years, for quite a long time. With the GDPR, you're right, like the sharing of the data, I don't know about experimental data. I think I might have to double check this with the ethics committee, because I guess in some ways there's like the competing, you know, the two different things and which one wins out, because this is research data, so it's scientific data, so it's a little bit different than, for example, companies collecting data about you for, you know, like adverts or something. This is for a scientific purpose, for a research purpose. So it might be differences there, but if you're interested, I can follow up on that. And
that'd just be really nice if, you know, if people would like to know in general terms how they've done.
Yeah,
we'll put if Jenny could just put the details in the chat. Oh, there we are, the details are in the chat now for Tara, so do take them down. Anybody who you know, wants to find Tara and take part, it sounds like we've got a lot of interest in this. And you know, I can remember probably some years back when Alistair was a bit more of a junior researcher, and I think we kind of supported him with recruiting for the pilot study for this. So you know, it's kind of like this is kind of also Shine's baby, all grown up and kind of going into the world on its own. So you know, it's just something we'd really like to see to the end. Such an important thing, you know, people have been flagging up for so many years, and it could lead to something that's going to benefit so many people. You know, I mean, you know, people like, you know, my mum's never ever known where she is in space, kind of like. It's yeah, it'd be really interesting to know kind of you know, what it is, how do we find our way around, all of us, and what, you know, how does it differ, and also kind of what's going to support people. Important. Yeah, Kelly said about, you know, research and awareness being so important, you know, in you know, of the conditions, and the only way of doing this you know, is to actually have research like this. So you know, everybody join in. We've got lots of opportunities coming up for, you know, lots of different studies, and pandemics put paid to some of it, you know, but put things on hold. But please, you know, please do keep an eye out, and the only way we're going to be able to find it out, kind of what support there is, develop new ways of getting around the condition so that everybody can live their life, you know, unencumbered by some of these effects, really. But yeah, so
still so much to find out.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Yeah, people have taken part in different research projects. It's really good. Excellent. Oh, hi, Carly. Okay, is there anything else that anybody would like to ask Tara while we've still got her captive? That's brilliant. Tara, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And, you know, please, again, do get hold of Tara if you'd like to participate. We'll probably sort of like give another little message perhaps on our social media in a couple of weeks' time, just to remind people, because we know, you know, how things can slip off the radar a little bit with people. So, you know, we'll just put a little reminder. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tara. We'll stay on if there's any other questions. We'll stay on and talk, you know, talk to them. So take care. Bye, Tara. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Bye.